Stop the video right now and answer this question honestly. When was the last time you avoided taking action on something important because you weren't certain you could succeed? That hesitation isn't just procrastination. It's the visible symptom of an identity crisis happening beneath the surface. The false evidence appearing real doesn't just create temporary discomfort, it fundamentally alters who you believe you are. Throughout this video, I'll reveal the 3 hidden mechanisms that transform normal performance anxiety into a corrupted identity and the exact steps to reclaim your authentic potential. Picture this. You're standing outside your boss's office, presentation in hand. Your heart races as thoughts flood your mind. What if they hate my ideas? What if I freeze up? What if this confirms I don't belong here? This isn't just anxiety, it's your identity under attack. The human brain processes threats to our self-concept with the same urgency as physical dangers. When you avoid taking action on something important, your nervous system is actually protecting what it believes is you. This isn't random, it's a sophisticated defense mechanism designed to maintain consistency in how you see yourself. Neuroscientists have discovered that identity threats activate the same brain regions as physical pain, explaining why criticism or potential failure feels genuinely painful. This protection mechanism creates what psychologists call identity homeostasis. Your brain's stubborn resistance to changing how you see yourself, even when that self-picture limits your potential. Think of it as your psychological immune system fighting to maintain what it considers your core self, even when that self keeps you trapped in limitation. The acronym FEAR, false evidence appearing real, reveals the deceptive nature of this process. Your brain collects selective evidence from past experiences to reinforce your current identity. It's not gathering objective data, it's building a case file to justify who you already believe you are. This evidence collection happens automatically, without your conscious awareness creating what appears to be an ironclad case against change. Consider how a single negative experience from childhood, perhaps being laughed at during a presentation, becomes interpreted as definitive proof of a permanent character trait. I'm not good at public speaking. That isolated incident transforms into a foundational belief about your capabilities, not because it's accurate, but because your brain prioritizes identity preservation over objective reality. This false evidence doesn't just influence your thoughts. It literally reshapes your neural pathways. Each time you avoid an opportunity, you strengthen the connection between potential action and perceived threat. Neuroplasticity works against you as avoidance behaviors become increasingly automatic. What begins as a conscious choice, I'll skip this presentation opportunity, becomes hardwired as an unconscious limitation. I'm just not a public speaker. What's particularly insidious is how this process operates below conscious awareness. You don't actively think, I'm avoiding this to protect my identity. Instead, you rationalize, I'm just not ready yet. Or the timing isn't right. Your brain manufactures logical sounding excuses to mask its true, protective intention. This subconscious maneuvering means you remain unaware of the real barrier to your growth. Your brain doesn't randomly generate fear. It strategically deploys it to maintain the identity it believes will keep you safe, creating a prison of false evidence that appears unquestionably real. The walls of this prison aren't built from external limitations, but from internally generated facts about who you are. What makes this prison so effective is that you can't see the bars. You mistake your brain's protective narratives for objective reality. This explains why traditional self-help approaches often fail. They focus on adding new behaviors without addressing the underlying identity that actively resists those very changes. You can learn new techniques, set ambitious goals, and create detailed plans. But if these conflict with your identity, your brain will sabotage them through fear responses, procrastination, or sudden loss of motivation. The new behaviors threaten who you believe you are, triggering automatic protection mechanisms. Consider a person who identifies as bad with money trying to follow a budget. Their brain doesn't just see budgeting as a neutral skill to acquire. It perceives it as a direct challenge to their established identity. Each time they attempt to save or track expenses, their brain generates resistance through anxiety, boredom, or urgent reasons to spend. The person interprets these feelings as further evidence that budgeting isn't for them, strengthening the limiting identity. The transformation begins not with adding new skills or knowledge, but by questioning the validity of the evidence your fear presents. This process requires something more fundamental than traditional behavior change approaches. It demands a willingness to examine the very foundation of how you see yourself and recognize that much of what you consider truth about your capabilities is actually carefully curated fiction. This curated fiction doesn't just limit you, it systematically erases contradictory evidence that might free you. Your brain isn't an objective historian of your experiences. He's more like a biased documentary filmmaker with a predetermined narrative it's desperate to prove, even when the raw footage tells a completely different story. The implications of this cognitive sleight of hand extend far beyond occasional self-doubt. Every time you accept fear's distorted evidence without question, you further cement neural pathways that make breaking free increasingly difficult. The first critical step toward dismantling this false evidence is understanding how your brain actively participates in this deception. Research by cognitive psychologists shows that, due to confirmation bias, we typically need 5 positive experiences to counterbalance the impact of a single negative one. This asymmetry means your brain isn't just passively recording reality. It's applying a powerful negative filter that dramatically overweights experiences that confirm your limitations. Consider the impact if you give 10 presentations and 9 go well, but 1 goes poorly. Your brain naturally gravitates toward that single negative data point as proof of your inadequacy. This selective curation happens automatically below conscious awareness, making it particularly difficult to counter without deliberate intervention. This is where evidence cross-examination becomes essential. A systematic approach to questioning what your fear presents as unassailable fact. When I work with clients, I have them document their fear-based beliefs and then subject each one to 3 levels of scrutiny. First, examine factual accuracy. Have I really failed at every important opportunity? Second, look for exceptions. When have I succeeded despite similar fears? And third, question interpretations. Even if I did struggle in that meeting, does it actually prove what I think it proves? What's fascinating is how rarely these beliefs survive this simple cross-examination. One client, a marketing director, was convinced she always choked under pressure. When we cataloged her actual high-pressure situations over the previous year, we discovered she had successfully navigated 83% of them, a success rate that completely contradicted her core belief. The problem wasn't her capability. It was her selective attention to the 17% that confirmed her fear-based identity. Strategic questioning dissolves the false foundation supporting your limitations, but questioning alone isn't always enough. Sometimes you need to create distance from contexts that constantly reinforce your limiting identity. This is where strategic disappearance becomes powerful. Unlike traditional approaches that focus on adding new behaviors on top of a resistant identity, strategic disappearance involves temporarily stepping away from environments where your fear-based identity is most active. This might mean taking a social media break if comparisons fuel your sense of inadequacy, or changing your workout environment if your current gym reinforces your belief that you'll never be athletic. This temporary withdrawal creates an identity vacuum, a psychological space where the constant reinforcement of your old identity weakens, allowing new possibilities to emerge with less immediate resistance. In this vacuum, your nervous system gradually learns that the absence of your limiting behaviors doesn't lead to the catastrophic consequences your fear predicted. One client, an aspiring writer paralyzed by perfectionism, used strategic disappearance by abandoning his primary writing project temporarily. Instead, he wrote in a completely different genre where his identity wasn't so invested. Without the crushing weight of his serious writer identity, his creativity flourished, gradually rebuilding confidence that transferred back to his main work when he returned to it 6 weeks later. This process isn't about positive thinking, it's about accurate thinking. Most fear-based beliefs rely on absolute language that rarely reflects reality. I always fail. Everyone will judge me. Nothing I do matters. These absolutist distortions rarely withstand careful scrutiny, yet they govern our actions as if they were indisputable facts. The real transformation comes when you recognize that your fear isn't protecting you from actual danger, but from evidence that might contradict your limiting self-concept. By systematically questioning false evidence and creating space for new experiences, you're not merely managing anxiety, you're fundamentally altering how your brain processes potential threats to your identity. We've come full circle now from recognizing the prison of fear to understanding how to break free. This liberation isn't about reinventing yourself. It's about removing the fabricated limitations that have obscured who you truly are beneath the fear. Think about what sits on the other side of your fear-based identity. What dreams have you abandoned not because they were impossible, but because they threatened the comfortable familiarity of who you believe yourself to be? The question that changed everything for my clients: what would you attempt tomorrow if you were certain the evidence your fear presents is fundamentally flawed? Your authentic potential awaits. Begin the deconstruction today.